Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission is to take your stack of sources, all the research, the articles, the insights, and synthesize them into the knowledge you need, and fast.
And today we are really getting into a kind of modern cognitive survival guide.
We are. We're tackling the knowledge workers, well, that impossible task list, the ceaseless overwhelm it creates, and we're doing it by focusing on the absolute smallest unit of resistance we could find, the micro moment.
And that micro moment is, it's just an intentional pause. We're often talking just 60 seconds long that you strategically insert between your critical tasks.
Okay, so a 60-second pause.
Yeah, and our sources really reveal this crucial tension at the heart of modern work. Our traditional definition of productivity is, frankly, broken. It demands constant attention without any replenishment.
Absolutely. The whole system just rewards this frantic busyness and, it treats that busyness as a proxy for useful effort.
Which it isn't.
No, and all the research shows it leads directly to chronic stress and ultimately burnout. So this deep dive is going to analyze the neuroscience, the principles of habit formation, and the entire lifestyle foundation that makes these short, intentional breaks not just a luxury, but an essential tool for maintaining clarity and really high-quality output.
We're going to show you how high-quality performance isn't about moving faster. It's about pausing smarter and leveraging your brain's natural cycles.
Okay, so let's unpack this with the philosophical counterpunch right away. If busyness is the disease, the antidote is summarized so well in the slow productivity philosophy.
I love this concept.
It's built around three core principles for sustainable accomplishment, and they are radical departures from the speed-obsessed status quo.
That's right. The first principle is just, do fewer things. The second, work at a natural pace. And the third is to obsess over quality.
So it completely shifts the goal.
Completely. We're not aiming for some peak performance on a Monday that leaves you a wreck by Friday. We are aiming for robust, sustainable accomplishment over years, not days.
I find that point about doing fewer things so important because it gets right at the cognitive cost of constant task switching. What actually happens to our brains when we keep adding more and more to the pile?
Well, what's fascinating is that the overhead of those tasks, so the time you spend managing, emailing, all that work about work.
Right, the admin?
Yeah, that doesn't increase linearly. It actually increases exponentially. As you assign yourself more, the friction between tasks just rises so steeply that the meaningful, concentrated work gets pushed to the very edges of the day.
Or it just never happens at all.
Or never happens at all.
And when we're trying to catch up on that meaningful work, the part of our brain that's responsible is already running on fumes. I'm talking about the brain's, its overworked CEO, the prefrontal cortex or the PFC.
The PFC, yeah. It's located right behind your forehead, and it is the seat of conscious, effortful thinking. It handles all your executive functions, things like learning a new skill, overriding an impulse, making a complex decision.
It sounds brilliant.
It is brilliant, but it fatigues very quickly under a continuous load. And critically, when we are under stress or experiencing this kind of cognitive fatigue, the brain defaults back to the most accessible, automatic behaviors.
And those automatic behaviors are almost always our bad habits, right? Like grabbing your phone, opening social media, reaching for that third cup of coffee.
Precisely. The moment the PFC taps out, your brain seeks the path of least resistance. And that is exactly where the intentional 60-second micro moment comes in.
Okay.
It's designed as this tiny mandatory interruption to fight that PFC fatigue. It prevents your brain from slipping onto autopilot right when you need to transition to your next focused task.
So to make that 60-second pause actually work, we have to understand the science of that autopilot.
Exactly. We need to get into the brain's built-in system, which is the habit loop. Every single behavior you have, good or bad, is driven by this three-part system: cue, routine, and reward.
Okay, so the cue is the trigger. It could be, the sound of an email notification, the feeling of finishing a task, or just that internal feeling of stress.
Exactly. Then the routine is the behavior you perform in response. This is where most people try and fail to just insert willpower.
And then the reward.
And then the reward, which is the positive outcome that reinforces the entire cycle. A mental break, a sense of relief, or that little hit of dopamine you get from a distraction.
Okay, so here's where it gets incredibly practical for you, the listener. To build good habits, like taking a micro moment that actually stick, the routine part has to be made so small, so frictionless, that it's almost impossible to skip.
That's the key. It's the neuroscience of lowering the activation energy.
The activation energy. Tell me more about that.
If a routine takes 5 minutes just to set up, or requires intense focus when your PFC is already tired, you just won't do it.
You'll skip it.
You'll skip it. That's why the sources recommend embracing these micro-routines. The most effective focused activity for learning or habit formation should be like a 3 to 7 minute block, and this is perfect for managing task transitions, even shorter.
So the 60-second pause.
A 60-second intentional pause is the sweet spot. It minimizes that activation energy, but still delivers a meaningful reset.
Okay, so let's walk through an example. I finish a hard task, the cue fires, that feeling of completion and relief. My brain wants the reward of a break. My default routine might be opening YouTube.
A very common one.
So if I want to replace that, the science tells me I can't just try to suppress the urge to open YouTube. How does replacement work?
Well, neuroscience shows you cannot simply delete a bad habit. It's just not how the brain is wired. You must actively work to replace it.
Ah.
The strategy is to identify the cue, which is finishing the task, and the underlying craving it satisfies, which is the need for a mental break. Then you strategically swap the routine.
For example, instead of grabbing my phone for 5 minutes of doom scrolling when I feel overwhelmed, I could insert that 60-second micro moment, stand up, stretch, and take maybe 3 deep breaths.
Exactly. You still get the core reward, that relief, that mental shift, but you got it through a healthier routine that protects your cognitive resources instead of draining them. The efficiency of that 1-minute replacement is what makes the new habit sustainable.
When we talk about finding a high-quality, high-impact routine for that 60-second moment, the research seems to consistently point us toward mindfulness.
It does.
Specifically, interventions like mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, or MBCT, and its partner, mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR.
And look, these are not just, airy-fairy concepts. They are empirically tested therapeutic approaches. MBCT and MBSR consistently decrease symptoms of depression, anxiety, and general stress across really diverse populations.
Now, we're moving past just behavioral theory now. We're talking about actual, verifiable neurobiological chains.
That's where the real power is.
So when you say neurobiological change, how immediate is that? I mean, how effective can a 60-second intervention really be?
That's a great question. While a full 8-week MBSR program yields profound results, studies show that even abbreviated programs, which really mimic the structure of a quick daily micro-practice, can induce brain changes similar to what we see in long-term meditators.
Wow, really?
Yes, we're talking about increases in activity in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which are areas critical for memory and learning.
And for anyone listening who finds themselves stressed or, reactive when they're switching between tasks, what's the most important neurological effect here?
Crucially, these practices lead to a measurable decrease in functional activity in the amygdala.
The brain's alarm center.
Think of it as your brain's alarm center. Exactly. When it's constantly firing, stress spikes, emotional regulation tanks. By strengthening the connection between the thoughtful PFC and the newly calmed amygdala, you achieve significantly better emotional control. And that makes the transition between demanding tasks far, far smoother.
This also seems to reinforce the importance of home practice, that regular, brief use of these techniques outside of a formal setting. The sources really highlight that consistency is what enhances the long-term effectiveness.
Absolutely. And when these brief micro-practices are intentionally brought into the workplace, the data shows they don't just reduce stress, they positively impact actual work performance.
How so?
They're directly associated with reduced emotional exhaustion, a decrease in occupational stress, and, this is important, an increase in self-compassion among employees. A quick, compassionate 60-second reset is so much more productive than trying to force yourself through a task when you're cognitively depleted.
Okay, so we've established the tactical fix, that 60-second pause. But for that small fix to hold up against systemic pressure, we have to look at the fuel and the rest that the PFC needs. Why do these micro moments fail if that holistic foundation isn't there?
It really comes down to baseline cognitive load and inflammation. This is where nutritional psychiatry and the gut-brain connection come in.
The gut-brain connection.
Yes. If your foundation is compromised, your PFC is already exhausted before the day even begins. That makes your 60-second intervention pretty ineffective against a chronic state of depletion.
So tell us more about this gut-brain axis. How does what we eat actually affect our ability to focus or manage stress?
Your gut is an incredibly complex ecosystem. It houses trillions of microbes that are constantly synthesizing neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that regulate your mood, your sleep, your appetite.
And when we feed ourselves the wrong stuff?
Well, when we eat ultra-processed foods, high-added sugars or saturated fats, those substances break down and cause systemic inflammation throughout the body and, importantly, the brain. And this inflammation is directly linked to increased cognitive load, anxiety, and depressive symptoms.
So a poor diet essentially increases the background noise and the
Mhm.
burden on the PFC. It makes it get tired faster, which makes it harder to manage that 60-second transition.
Precisely. We need to combat that. And the good news is that fiber-rich foods and omega-3 fatty acids have powerful anti-inflammatory effects that really favor brain health.
So what are some specifics?
The sources are clear on this. Actively incorporate fiber-rich vegetables like broccoli, spinach, cauliflower. Also, intentionally include fermented foods with active live cultures, things like kimchi, miso, or natural yogurt. They help restore a healthy intestinal bacteria balance.
And we can't forget the healthy fats.
Never forget the healthy fats. Omega-3s and olive oil are vital. The overarching takeaway on nutrition is that eating a nutrient-dense, well-balanced diet, often like the Mediterranean pattern, is just paramount for building the resilience that allows those short micro-moments to actually land and stick.
And finally, let's talk sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
It's critical for stabilizing the whole system. The sources confirm that the natural tendency to feel sleepy in the afternoon, what we call the siesta, is a real physiological peak. It happens about 8 hours after you wake up.
It's a perfect window for a mental reset.
But there are strict rules around this, aren't there?
Very strict rules. The constraints on that power nap are critical for it to be beneficial. First, it has to be brief. Never let it go past 15 to 20 minutes. The absolute maximum cap is 30 minutes.
And what happens if you go longer?
If you push past that, or if you try to nap more than 12 hours after your previous night's sleep, it will actively disrupt your subsequent nocturnal rest. It just defeats the entire purpose.
And connecting back to our chat about the habit loop and cues, the environment matters here too.
A lot. You have to consciously avoid associating environmental cues, like your bed, with alert or stress behaviors. If you are frequently watching the clock, worrying about work, or scrolling on your phone in bed, you're creating these powerful stress cues that counteract your brain's efforts to relax.
So we started this deep dive with this simple, really accessible concept of the 60-second intentional pause, the micro moment. And we've now placed it within this massive, critical context of neuroscience, habit formation, mindfulness, nutrition, and rest.
And the central takeaway for you, the knowledge worker, is this. The path to sustainable, high-quality accomplishment isn't about frantically speeding up or trying to add more willpower to your day. It's not going to work.
Right.
It's about intentionally designing these micro-routines to leverage your brain's own habit mechanisms against the inevitable cognitive fatigue that defines modern work life.
So if the key to lasting change is replacing a bad automatic routine with a better one that's linked to the exact same reward, a brief mental break, relief, distraction, here's the final thought for you. What unproductive habit do you find yourself defaulting to most often in that moment between tasks?
And what specific 60-second micro-moment, be it 3 deep breaths, a minute of focused stretching, or a quick visual reset, could you strategically insert in its place today?
Go apply that knowledge to your next task transition. That was the deep dive. We'll see you next time.